During a live show, Johnny Carson asked a deep and personal question that seemed like just another routine moment for everyone. But Keanu Reeves' answer was so honest, quiet, and touching that the entire studio suddenly fell silent. That moment made everyone reflect again on life and the true depth of human emotions. Keanu Reeves, after everything you have lived through and achieved, what do you think happens when we die? Asked Johnny Carson in a calm voice, leaning slightly forward in his chair. Keanu Reeves did not answer immediately. He lowered his gaze, intertwined his fingers, and breathed calmly before saying, "I don't know what happens when we die. I don't have a clear answer for that. But I do know something. I know that those who love us will miss us." The studio fell completely silent. Johnny Carson asked Keanu Reeves a question, and his answer left the studio in complete silence. It was not an uncomfortable silence or one filled with dramatic tension. It was a different kind of silence, almost intimate, as if every person present felt that the sentence had touched something personal. The lights were still illuminating the stage. The cameras remained on, and the audience was still there, but the atmosphere had changed almost imperceptibly. Up until that moment, the interview had been unfolding with the usual natural rhythm of a late-night show. They had talked about films, recent productions, and the challenges of portraying complex characters. Keanu Reeves appeared calm, answering with the slow cadence that characterizes him. He did not exaggerate gestures or raise his voice. Johnny Carson guided the conversation with his usual experience, balancing lighter moments with more reflective questions. But that question introduced an unexpected depth. Keanu Reeves did not try to elaborate a theory about life after death. He did not quote religious or philosophical ideas either. His answer was simple, human, and direct. By saying that those who love us will miss us, he shifted the focus from the unknown mystery to the concrete experience of absence. He did not talk about the afterlife, he talked about connection. The audience remained motionless. Some people kept their hands folded on their laps. Others slightly tilted their heads. No one applauded immediately. No one laughed to ease the moment. It was a shared silence, full of recognition. Johnny Carson looked at him with respect. After a few seconds, he commented softly, "That's a very honest answer." Keanu Reeves nodded. "It's the only thing I can say with certainty," he replied. "I don't know the rest." The simplicity of that statement strengthened the impact. He did not intend to offer universal comfort or solve an eternal question. He simply acknowledged a human fact. When someone leaves, what remains is the memory in those who loved them. The conversation continued without hurry. Johnny Carson asked whether that way of thinking influenced how he lived his daily life. Keanu Reeves reflected before answering. "Yes," he finally said. "It reminds me that time is not infinite, and that every encounter can be more important than it seems." He did not express it with sadness, but with calm acceptance. He spoke like someone who had thought about it for years and had learned to live with that idea without dramatizing it. He explained that over time, he had understood that the most meaningful moments are not always the most visible ones. Sometimes they are brief conversations, small gestures, silent presences. He commented that when someone dies, people do not remember perfect speeches or public achievements, but rather how that person made others feel. Johnny Carson rested his elbow on the desk and maintained eye contact. "So, do you think what matters is how we treat people while they are here?" Keanu Reeves responded with a slight smile. "I think so. We can't control how much time we have, but we can control how we use the time we share. The audience seemed to absorb every word with sincere attention. There was no background music or effects intensifying the moment. Only the conversation, sustained by two people sitting face to face. Keanu Reeves spoke about the importance of listening. He said that sometimes the best way to be present is simply not to interrupt. He recalled that many times, when someone is going through difficulty, they do not need immediate solutions but companionship. That companionship can be silent but meaningful. Being there, he added, sometimes that's enough. Johnny Carson repeated the phrase quietly, as if confirming its weight. The studio remained calm. The interview no longer had the usual rhythm of light entertainment. It had transformed into a reflective conversation, yet without losing its naturalness. Keanu Reeves acknowledged that it is not always easy to maintain that awareness. He also gets distracted, rushes, and makes mistakes. But he said he tries to remember, especially after losing people close to him, that every shared moment is limited. Thinking about that doesn't make me sad, he clarified. It makes me appreciate more what I have now. A soft murmur of understanding passed through the audience. Johnny Carson thanked him for the sincerity of his answer. He did not try to close the moment with a joke or abruptly change the topic. He understood that the pause had meaning by itself. As the program moved toward its first commercial break, the atmosphere maintained that reflective stillness. The initial silence did not disappear. It transformed into deeper attention. Johnny Carson asked Keanu Reeves a question, and his answer left the studio in complete silence. And in that silence there was no emptiness, but rather a shared awareness of something simple and true. That life is defined in large part by the love we give and receive. The studio lights continued shining, but the conversation had acquired a different softness. In that moment it was not a spectacle, but a genuine human exchange. Keanu Reeves remained calm, his hands still intertwined, aware that he had said something that needed no further explanation. And so concluded the first part of that live interview, marked by a direct question, a simple answer, and a silence that spoke louder than any applause. When the program returned from the commercial break, the studio seemed smaller. Not physically, but in the shared feeling among those present. The question had already been asked, the answer already given, and yet it still lingered in the air like an idea no one wanted to rush past. Johnny Carson quietly arranged his cards on the desk, but did not immediately look at them. He looked at Keanu Reeves with a more reflective expression than at the beginning of the program. Keanu Reeves maintained the same calm posture. He showed no sign of wanting to correct or expand what he had said. Nor did he seem uncomfortable with the depth the conversation had taken. Rather, he gave the impression of someone who had accepted the natural weight of certain questions and felt no need to escape them. Johnny Carson spoke in a measured tone. "Sometimes on television we avoid those kinds of questions," he commented. "But I suppose they are part of what we all think about, even if we don't always say it out loud." Keanu Reeves nodded slowly. "Yes, I think everyone thinks about it at some point. We just don't always share it aloud." The audience remained silent, but now it was a stable, almost comfortable silence. There was no tension, there was attention. Johnny Carson decided to explore the idea a little more, but without dramatizing it. "When you say that those who love us will miss us, are you thinking more about the people you've lost or about the people who might lose you one day?" Keanu Reeves inhaled gently. He did not seem surprised by the question. He looked briefly toward the floor before answering. "I think about both," he said. "About the people who are no longer here and those who still are. Thinking about that reminds me that there is still time to say things I may have postponed." There was no evident sadness in his voice. It was more like quiet clarity. The audience listened without moving. Some people crossed their arms discreetly, others kept their hands resting on their knees. No one seemed distracted. Keanu Reeves continued speaking calmly. "Sometimes we think there will always be another opportunity to talk, to reconcile, to say thank you. But that's not always the case. And I don't say that from fear, but from awareness." Johnny Carson placed both hands on the desk and nodded. "That awareness changes the way a person lives." "Yes," Keanu Reeves replied, "or at least it should." A slight smile appeared on his face, not ironic but humble. He acknowledged that intention does not always translate into perfect action. The conversation flowed naturally, without seeming rehearsed. There was no hurry to reach a specific point. Johnny Carson, with years of experience in front of cameras, knew when to allow a moment to breathe. "In your work," he asked, "you're surrounded by many people, sometimes only for a short time. Does that idea influence how you relate to them?" Keanu Reeves reflected for a few seconds. "Yes, on a film set, for example, you can spend months with a team. Then everyone goes their separate way. I try not to take that shared time for granted. I might never see some of those people again, so I try to make sure the memory is respectful." He did not say it solemnly. He expressed it as something practical almost every day. "Respectful," Johnny Carson repeated. "Yes, it's not always about doing something extraordinary. Sometimes it's simply treating someone well, listening when they speak, not rushing to judge." The studio remained attentive. The atmosphere was different from the usual television energy. It felt closer to a private conversation shared publicly. Johnny Carson glanced briefly at the audience before returning his gaze to Keanu Reeves. "Your first answer was very short, but it created a strong reaction here." Keanu Reeves slightly inclined his head. "I suppose everyone has missed someone," he replied. He added nothing else for a few seconds. That brief silence did not feel uncomfortable. It reinforced what had been said. Johnny Carson spoke softly. "Yes, I think we all have." The simplicity of the exchange felt sufficient. There was no need for grand statements. Keanu Reeves continued, almost as if thinking aloud. "Missing someone is painful, but it's also a sign that there was love. And that isn't something negative." The audience remained still, but there was a shared understanding. "So," Johnny Carson asked, "would you say that thinking about death makes you value life more?" Keanu Reeves answered without much hesitation. "Yes, it makes me value the present. It makes me pay more attention to the people in front of me." He briefly looked toward the audience as he said this, acknowledging their presence. "Even now," he added, "this moment is part of that too." It was not a phrase designed to move people. It was a simple observation. The audience responded with a gentle, brief applause that did not break the calm atmosphere. Johnny Carson smiled. Not many guests say that in the middle of a live show. Keanu Reeves returned the smile. "That's true." A light collective laugh followed, easing the intensity without breaking it. The conversation began moving naturally toward its conclusion, but without losing its depth. Johnny Carson asked if there was anything Keanu Reeves tried to practice consciously in his daily life, knowing that time is limited. Keanu Reeves thought for a few seconds before answering. I try not to leave a place with important words left unsaid. I don't always succeed, but I try. A thank you, an apology, recognition. Sometimes they're small things that change how someone remembers that meeting. The studio remained attentive. We can't control how long we'll be here, he continued, but we can influence how we treat people while we are. Johnny Carson nodded slowly. The conversation did not need more intensity. It had already reached its central point from the beginning, with that simple question and that brief answer. In the end, what made that interview memorable was not the mystery of death, but the clarity about life. Keanu Reeves did not try to explain the unexplainable. He simply reminded everyone of something obvious and profound at the same time. That we will be missed by those who love us, and that while we are here, we can choose how we want to be remembered.